saying record. I don't know if that means she's going to record, she wants to record.
There
Oh,
we go.
No, it's recording. Okay, we're good.
Thank you.
You're on the record. Yay.
We're on the record. All right. Okay. Bellingham Conservation Commission will hold public hearings in accordance with Mass Wetlands Protection Act, General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Bellingham Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and the notice of intent for the proposal to construct a parking lot, site grading and stormwater management system within the 100-foot buffer zone, bordering vegetated wetlands associated with the construction of 110 townhouse dwellings and 36 buildings for the proposed residential subdivision entitled Bungay Brook Estates, located at Assessors Map 93, Parcel 22, 30 Locust Street, Bellingham. James Almonte, Lane Design Collaborative, Westboro, Mass. has submitted the filing on behalf of Stephen Vinicasa, Westboro, Mass. The continuations will be held online via the Zoom option on Wednesday, January 12th at 7. Okay. So it's been a little time since our last meeting, and moving forward, what I propose to do is to utilize the last peer review letter from Frank BSc, and he is here present. So before we get to the actual letter, and I know we've discussed this once before, I believe, but I want to make sure it's on the record this time. We're in receipt of the proposed sewer line hookup. And I have a question relative to the terminus. On the western portion of the sewer line, it terminates at Pine Acres, and it looks like the sewer line goes into the rear or the north of lot 19. And I just want some clarification on that. Because the line we had, there was a jog that went toward the north. And I just want to know where exactly that line is going to access Pine Acres Road.
So I'm Steve Anacasa. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So we obtained an easement through Fran Serbio's property before he sold it. And we actually installed that line through the back of his yard and up the sideline and right up to the end of the street. So that portion was installed and then he sold his house. So that's already installed. And what we're waiting for is, and there was some lapse in time before we made the agreement with Precious Blood Church, and we acquired that easement, I don't know, maybe 4 or 6 months ago. That has not been installed. That's part of, we have yet to install that line. So is that what you're referring to? Does that answer your question?
Well, the Fran Serbio lot is lot 3 on Pine Acres Road.
I'm sorry, I don't know which lot it is. It's a lot right on the corner of where the, if you come in from Pine Acres from the eastern exit, as soon as you make that sharp corner there, he's right set back off the road. He has a large barn in the back and, pool and whole setup. One of the nicer houses on the street.
Okay, so you're going from the cemetery into that lot.
Yes.
Okay. I think we discussed that once before, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So we'll take a look at Frank's letter from December 27th. There's quite a bit of material here that doesn't relate to the commission, but there are a couple things that we want to talk about. And the first one in item 2, you're applying for a waiver to dispense with the test pit, three test pits in the location at each stormwater management structure, or at least you're requesting that they be a condition of the permit. In the past, we've granted waivers for this requirement, but we've never granted waivers from 0 test pits. We've granted waivers from 3 test pits to 1. And I think that it's important, and I think we've discussed this, maybe not directly, but we need to have at least 1 test pit in the location of each basin. And I know there was some concern about doing the testing during the operation of the golf course, but the golf course has not been in operation for months now. And I think that the commission is not amenable to granting a waiver for that. So you're going to need to provide testing for those pits and putting the locations and the information onto the plans.
We recognize the importance of a test pit there, and it just seemed to be so intrusive to think about going out there and tested during the operation of the golf course. Now, the golf course is not open right now, but it was open up until just recently. I mean, I think there was still golfing in there in November. I don't know about December, but and there might have been some people in December too. But we recognize that we do have some soil borings out there. It was all pretty uniform, with the exception of I guess there was one small test pit that had a small layer in it, but it's very uniform. And don't hold me exactly. I think it was like 23 feet to groundwater, so we don't really have a groundwater issue. We will test during the construction of the detention basin is what we would like to ask the commission. So definitely a test pit, but we'd like to do it during the construction, and we're happy to have someone for the town or some representative to witness it at that point, if you please.
And I think that I've made myself pretty clear here that this is not the kind of thing we engage in, because if there are changes that are required, we have an unwieldy process where we have plans of record that don't reflect conditions. Changes need to be made, amendments have to be filed. So we always get the test data before we issue the permit.
Well, like I say, we have soil borings, so we know what is there. So it's a matter of digging it, going out there and digging with a backhoe is very intrusive at this time. And we will definitely do that at the time of construction, and you can condition that. Isn't this generally a condition of the planning board, not conservation, as far as the detention basins?
Absolutely not.
Oh, this is the conservation for detention basins?
We
Yeah,
require
that's where the water's going.
we require 3 test pits in each location.
Conservation?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, we're happy to do that. We just ask that we not dig up the golf course at this time.
Nobody's playing on the golf. Are people going to play in the golf course in the spring?
You know what? Hopefully not, but we just have a hard time.
I don't see what the issue is.
But
How is
they
it
may.
intrusive? How is it interrupting the operation of the golf course?
This is Jim Almonte from Land Design Collaborative. If I may speak to this as well, I think it's more of a timing issue at this point. I mean, we certainly agree to do the testing. We just don't want it to hold up the permit at this point. It sounded like, this has been granted in the past. We're not asking for, for us to not do any testing. We're willing to do it. It's more of a timing issue at this point.
Let me say it one more time. Our standard says that we have to have 3 test pits in the location of each basin. In the past, we've granted waivers and allowed 1. We're willing to grant waivers to allow 1. The testing has to be completed before the permit is issued. I think that's as clear as I can make it. Frank, do you have any comments here?
No, I think that's been the practice of the commission. The only other item I'll throw out there, and you can shoot this down, is that, I've seen in other municipalities a requirement that prior to the commencement of construction, prior to getting a building permit, that you undertake the test pits and provide that information to appropriate municipal staff before the actual building construction begins. So I'll throw that out there for the commission to consider. Then the only other comment I had on this was during previous discussions before the board and planning board and the commission, a couple of the test pits had apparently an impermeable layer that they found some like perched water. And there was discussion, I think people agreed at the hearing, at least, I haven't seen it in writing, that if in fact that test pit in the individual basin encountered one of those impermeable layers, that would be dug up or somehow pierced so that they wouldn't have a barrier for the water to infiltrate.
Right, and if
We
that
did
was, if that were the case, then what we would need to do is we would need to be able to condition that, but we don't know if that's actually the case until the testing's performed.
Well, this is Mike Scott. Just to continue, and I know you've said it 3 times, but I'm going to continue on Frank's point. There was one test pit where there was sort of a confining layer. We did add a note, as discussed with the planning board, and I believe this commission as well, to the December plans, the most recent plans that you have in front of you that BSC reviewed, to remove, if with limits of the basins that a similar layer is encountered, that be removed and replaced with similar material to that material below the confining layer. I mean, what we found is 20 to 25 feet of sand in the 5 borings that were performed. They were all consistent with the exception of the confining layer in one. As Mr. Vinicas has stated, the groundwater was some 20 to 25 feet deep on the site. There are no cuts that result in any condition where any of the basins would be within 10 feet of groundwater. And understanding that the course may now be out of play, to do anything other than take a boring machine out there and get the depth that's necessary would require a massive excavation to get to the depth in those basins, meaning to get down to the bottom of the basin and then to get down another 5 feet or so below that to verify groundwater. You're talking a 15-foot hole in some places, and with these types of soils, you're talking a massive hole. You'll have collapse of any banks that would form, and that was in part why we did the borings, understanding that to dig a 5 to 10-foot hole would require a hole far greater than that in length and breadth because of the sandy nature of the soil. So the discussion with the planning board, understanding that they may have a different opinion on this or practice, was that given the consistency of the soil testing to date and the reasons that I just explained for not having done open test pits, in conjunction with the fact that the course was active, that similar to what Mr. DePietro just said, that testing would be done. There was not a request to do no testing; it was to do it after the fact. And I'll leave it there. Thank you,
Mr. Chair. I have a question.
Yeah.
So this is directed to the applicant in general. If they reviewed the Town of Bellingham Conservation Commission bylaws, regulations, they would clearly have seen that because we have had that in place about the test pits. Why are we just hearing about this plea to not slow down the permitting process this late in the process? Why wasn't this brought up a couple of months ago that you didn't want to do anything until after the permitting is going on, until the permit had been approved?
We didn't want to do nothing. We had a boring rig out there months ago and did borings.
Right. But borings and test pits, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Consultant, Mr. DePietro or Cliff, are not acceptable for determining detention basin issues they're not the same as test pits borings, correct, for that purpose?
It's not consistent with
right.
the requirements of our regulation.
Okay.
And the reason they didn't want to do that is because the golf course was in operation and they didn't want to be, obtrusive to the people who are playing golf.
But the same argument about you need to do a very large hole at this point in time. It's because of the soil, not because of the time of the year, correct?
Both.
Okay, well, if the golf course wasn't in operation in August and you had done this, you would have still had to do such a large hole. So I'm not sure I follow the argument about you'd have to create a big hole. I mean,
Well,
if the course isn't open, you've got no problem doing that. I mean, is the developer going to own the property now? Is the golf course closed? I mean, I'm not
No.
sure what's
We
going
don't
on.
own it. We do not own it.
Okay, so you're taking a risk if this falls through the whole sale or whatever, that you would have spent the money and done the investment. And is that the reason you don't want to do the test pits?
We didn't say we don't want to do the test
At
pit.
this time, sorry.
It's
At
a
this-
timing thing, and we agree to do the test pit. I think that to enforce that on us now, to create a giant hole out in the middle of an operating golf course, whether somewhere the snow's gonna melt and some guy might want to get out there, for us to dig all this up now seems punitive to me. I don't understand the reason why the board would insist that. I know that this is rules and regulations. This is a little unique to be doing this on a golf course versus a wooded site where nobody really cares. I've been developing for 45 years, and this is the first time I have a golf course. So we have dug these holes on every single other site, but I think the site's a little bit unique to the fact that it's a beautiful golf course, whether it's closed right now, and they may want to reopen next week. I don't know. I want to give them the ability to open next week or January or February or March if they want to. If the permit process slows down, I want to give them the chance to operate that golf course. Why should I go out there and destroy it and we're going to destroy it. Believe me, if we go out there and dig a giant hole with the sand the way it is and it's collapsing in, we're going to destroy a huge area. For what? For timing? We didn't say we wouldn't do it. We're not saying that. Timing.
No, you're asking us to change our policy and regulations to accommodate your timing, because to
I'm
us,
asking you.
we need the test results. That's been made clear from day one when you start the application process, if you looked at the bylaws. So I'm not sure. I understand what you're saying, but I don't necessarily agree with that. I kind of side with the chairman here that our policy is in place for a reason. We want to be consistent with our policy. Otherwise, we open the door to all sorts of problems down the road. And I'm not even sure I would be satisfied if you were willing to put a legal document in place saying you will stop all construction prior to receiving the test pit results, no matter what point you're in the construction, until we're satisfied at whatever point in time down the road we are doing test pits, just to continue the permitting process. Because tying it in, as Mr. DePietro said, to the possibility of the planning board or someone else, building department rather, sorry, getting their permit approved, now we're tying two different departments, which normally aren't, more results from one allowing the other to proceed and so on. I don't think the town would even view that favorably.
I'm not advocating because of, I don't want to spend the money, or I don't want to be inconvenienced, or I don't want to sell a machine up there. I'm saying this because I don't want to rip the course apart at this time. And I think that the rules of you have the rules and regulations, but there's also unique situations, and that's why you have a board, and that's why you have the authority to make exceptions when something doesn't fit the right slot. So what we're asking, what the board is asking, if you're demanding us to get out there and dig these big giant holes out in the middle of that golf course now, is punitive.
It's not punitive.
It is punitive.
It is the regulation. It has
It's
been
the regulations being punitive.
I think the timing of the permitting in your project might be the problem, not our regulation. That to move it along in the timetable you want, you don't own the course yet. If you owned the course, this wouldn't be an issue, correct?
I'm not so sure I'd want to go rip that up, dig this giant hole out there if I did want to go to court. We have not said that we won't do it. We didn't say that. We're saying timing. What is the reason, besides the regulation, what is the reason why you won't work with us on this?
I'm going to reverse that and say, what is the reason why you won't provide the required information?
I told you exactly why, because we're going to build a big giant hole in the middle of this golf course right now. That's why.
Okay, and as a result of that, we are going to be able to know exactly what the existing conditions are and be able to write a legally binding permit.
We got soil logs in there. You've got soil logs in there and you know it. I can't believe we're having this conversation. You guys are digging your heels in. You're digging your heels on something that's so minor.
Well, if it's so minor, complete the task.
It's so minor that we shouldn't complete the task. It's gonna be done. We have the logs. I don't want to keep repeating myself.
This is going to be a permit requirement. The waiver is not going to be granted. Okay, so let's move on. And this is going to be a good one too. We're going to talk about the roof infiltration. Roof infiltrators. 1996, the stormwater management policy was instituted by DEP. In 97, it was revised, and the stormwater management booklet was provided. At that time, any subdivision of 4 or more units had to infiltrate roof runoff directly into the ground because it was clean water. The idea was to encourage recharge. In 2008, the stormwater management guidelines became the stormwater management standards, and that policy was not part of the 2008 standards. However, since 2006, it has been the policy of the Conservation Commission to infiltrate all roof runoff. And we have done it on hundreds and hundreds of homes. It's been our policy. We've done it. It's going to be a permit requirement.
So Mike Scott, if I may, the entirety of the stormwater on the site is recharged through stormwater infiltration basins. The any of the rooftop is either going to drain onto it without a recharge, dedicated recharge dry well, independent of an open basin. All the rooftop water will still make it to an infiltration basin. Stormwater standards encourage roof recharge of certain roof type. They absolutely do not require roof recharge. That's incorrect. It is certainly a recharge is a required component. The preferred method is open, not hidden basins, if you'll call it that, or subsurface basins. They're certainly allowed and they can work without question. I think we talked about this, and it may have been the stormwater regulations in town that encourage overland flow and open basins rather than subsurface recharge systems. But in this case, were individual dry wells to be installed, there would probably be 2, more likely 3 to 4 per buildings. We're talking 100 more structures on the property that, if they fail, will do no good and would never be realistically, it'd be very difficult to determine if they had failed. And the maintenance of them, in and around adjacent to homes that are going to be fed by a number of utilities from the front, would be difficult at best to a future homeowner. So, not disagreeing that they serve their purpose. We design them all the time. Single family homes, to me, in some instances it makes sense, but here you have a sandy site where you have the opportunity to let the water flow overland and not even necessarily reach a stormwater basin. So we had discussed whether or not a waiver is required. It's not required by your regulations because it's not in your regulations. And I say yours, I mean the town of Bellingham's. Whether it's a practice or policy, totally different matter. So we didn't request a waiver there, and we do strongly believe that they're overkill, especially in a situation like this where it's a private development. So it's not even a situation where stormwater would be entering a town's drainage system and the town would be obligated to ensure that there were no spills or to maintain that system, because this would be privately owned. And we just feel that it's not necessary. Understanding, and as many communities do on single family homes, require it on a home. Here we have large dedicated drainage system to the entire development. So the entire site was planned with that in mind, rather than individual systems.
If I can just add to that, this is Jim Almonte. I know Mike referenced the the town of Bellingham regulations, the stormwater regulation section 245.13A5 says exactly that. Open sedimentation is preferred. Underground inline treatment units, although allowed in the Mass DEP regulations, are less desirable due to the cost to maintain. Open recharge basins are also preferred over underground infiltration fields or recharge galleries. Underground recharge is less desirable due to the potential and cost and disturbance that would be incurred should construction be necessary if infiltration performance deteriorates over time. I mean, that's right out of the Bellingham subdivision stormwater regulations.
Right, enforced by the planning board, and I believe that refers to inline structures that will discharge into a basin. These are individual roof leaders, and the purpose here is to assure that clean water is infiltrated directly into the land. No other pollutants. There's no icing. Since 1996, when this has been a policy of the commission, we have had 0 reports of failures of these structures. Now, I know it's only 25 years, but I mean, it seems like a pretty reasonable sample size, hundreds of these things. And even most recently, in some of our larger warehouse projects, provided that the roofing is appropriate, we've infiltrated from major, 10-acre buildings, and we've made sure that the roof infiltration takes place.
Those larger projects are perfectly suited, large roof and large commercial projects perfectly suited for that type of stormwater BMPs. And I think really that's where they're most appropriate. We do it all the time. We're not suggesting they can't work, but in this case, they likely would work. I just think in this case, as I've stated, it's overkill. I think it runs counter to your own stormwater bylaw. We've had this conversation. We put that in writing. I understand your opinion. It can certainly be force fit. But that's what it is in this case. And
Mr. Chair, I have a question. The response, LDC response that I'm looking at under number 3 there is ground surface and flowing overland into a catchment. I guess it's mid-sentence there. Or swale, eventually reaching an infiltration basin. So groundwater recharge will occur when runoff enters a swale or reaches an infiltration basin on site. My question is, you got 36 buildings there on site. Has the ground landscaping plan been developed to show, since there will be a lot of landscaping on that property, that every building will have every possible drain that is coming off of a roof directed and flowed the entire distance from the building to the nearest infiltration basin?
the grading of the
That's what
site.
you're saying is going to happen. You're saying, excuse me, I must have quite done. So that's what I'm reading, that you're saying it's going to go to an infiltration basin on site, and somehow all 36 buildings, all the roofs on all 36 buildings have been designed to flow overland to, or via swale or just over the surface of the ground, frozen ground conditions or not, to an infiltration basin.
That's correct. The entire site is a bowl. The entirety of the site runs into some stormwater basin before it would overflow, and the only time we have the calculations, and Mr. Petro can take over or back this up, whichever. The only conditions where there was any overflow was during the frozen ground condition of a basin. The reality is we have the design to prevent that from occurring. There are recharge trenches within each basin. So no water is going to run off the property. No water is going to run into a wetland without flowing first through a stormwater basin.
So
To answer your question.
Not quite there. You've addressed how it's not going to leave a basin. My question is getting from the buildings to the basins. Has every piece of property or every piece of ground between the basin and a building where water is projected to run off of it, the end of the downspout or whatever, however it's going to get to the ground from the roof of the building, is that all been landscaped and designed so that you don't have conflicting slopes and you end up having puddles of water and pools forming in areas that are not in a basin? I know the whole area is in a bowl, but that still doesn't.
Yes, the water, right. So all the roadways and all the lawn areas around each building, driveways and the rear of the sides of the buildings all drain to an infiltration basin. So any water that falls on the site will run into an infiltration basin because of the proposed grading scheme.
Okay, look, I'm gonna need to suggest that we continue this hearing to later in the evening because we are running late on a couple of ongoing projects here that we're legally obligated to open. So if everybody's amenable to that, we can do some more work tonight, or we can continue to another evening. Should we continue later this evening? Our last hearing is open at 7:45, so we may be able to go to around 8 o'clock. It's up to you.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with it.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to continue this hearing to later in the meeting when time allows.
So moved.
Second,
Michael? Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Okay, by unanimous vote. All right. All right. The Bellingham Conservation Commission will hold continuations of public hearings in accordance with the Mass Wetlands Protection Act, General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bellingham Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and the notice of intent for the proposed roadway mitigation along the site frontage entrance to Curtis Apartments as required by Mass DOT, including installation of additional catch basins connecting to the existing system at the easterly end of the site and within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands. The site is located at Assessor's Map 51, parcels 4, 4A, 4B, 6, and 8 at 161, 163, and 167 Mechanic Street. Keith Lincoln, Chapel Engineering, Marlborough, Mass. has submitted the filing on behalf of Russell Bean, Campanelli, Braintree, Mass. The continuations will be held on the evening of Wednesday, January 12th at 7:30. Apologies, we're a couple of minutes late. Okay. And so.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So what we were thinking we would do is go back to where we left off, which is back in December at the last hearing. It was established that we would take videos of the 12-inch reinforced concrete pipe crossing Route 140 that the proposed drainage for the roadway improvements is making a connection to. The purpose of this was to establish the structural integrity of the pipe and get an overall assessment of the configuration of the pipe that we were going to be connecting to. So what has happened since then is the videos have been taken and distributed to the commission, to Frank for his review. We have reviewed them internally, and we have received Frank's review comments. And with your permission, I was thinking we would share the screen. I have Frank's comments up and we can go through them one by one. We are in general agreement with all of Frank's comments and would intend to follow through on the recommendations and or just basically address in one way or another each of his comments. And we were thinking that would be the discussion we could have this evening. So if that's okay, I will share the screen and go ahead with that. Is that?
No, that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely
Okay.
fine. And Keith, what
Okay.
we'll do is we'll ask you to make notations and provide them in writing to us.
Sure.
Okay.
Do I have the ability to share the screen?
You should.
Okay. Okay, does everybody see the PDF up on the screen?
We do.
Yep.
Okay, so this is from Frank's peer review dated December 27th. And it gives the general overview of all the documentation that has been reviewed, the criteria, and all of the reviews that have taken place up until the previous hearing. And then it gets directly into the new material, which is the video inspection of the 12-inch concrete pipe. There are 9 separate points here, and like I said, I think we just go through them one by one, and we can vet each one of them out. And then, as you said, Cliff, we can follow through with a written response based on these discussions. So point 1, I think in general, we're all in agreement that it is in fact a reinforced concrete pipe and that it has structural integrity. However, as Frank says, there are some issues that the videos also revealed. The pipe itself has structural integrity. Point number 2 identifies the fact that there is standing water in the pipe, noticed, and beginning with about 3 inches of water at the outfall, and then gradually decreasing in depth to about a 1/2 inch at the other end of the pipe, the upstream end. And I will also pull up a sketch to better identify this. At the outfall, there was approximately 3 inches of standing water, and that depth gradually diminishes to where it's at about a 1/2 inch at the upstream end of the pipe, which, as it turns out, is at the location of a buried manhole that none of us were aware of being in existence. There's no plans for it. There was nothing to indicate that other than, by this video. With that in mind, I think that then takes us into the 2 points 3 and 4, which are the potential causes for that standing water. One, and this is what we think is the most likely cause, is that there is a buildup of debris on the downstream end of the pipe, which is preventing the water from fully discharging from the pipe. And then Jeff, you can chime in on this as well, but the site superintendent did go, after being made aware of this, he went and tried to see if he could tell where, if in fact there was a blockage. And I think part of the problem was that there's standing water outside the pipe. And we really kind of need to do more of a thorough survey in this area. And also the intent would be to clear the blockage if that is in fact the case, but we would want to verify it by survey.
Agreed. Yeah, I totally agree with you with Keith's comments. And I'd like to see if we can have maybe, if the commission can give us some guidance on what our latitude is to have, or what they want to supervise, to have somebody to maybe have a couple laborers go down and try to break up some of what's at the outflow pipe to see if it actually does correct any of the flow.
Jeff, we have a picture of that, don't we?
There is a picture that was sent in Frank's comments. It's, I believe, I think it's page 7 or 8 of 9.
That actually is not the outlet. That's the inlet on the upstream side.
That's photo 1.
Oh, yeah, that's photo. Yeah, that one there is for the inlet. And the intent of that was to show it's not blocked on the upstream side.
Okay.
Jumping ahead a little bit, one of my sort of unknowns or question, there is the second picture you saw. There's that unknown pipe. That's a picture of the unknown pipe going into the buried manhole. Sound like a
Yes,
mystery and whatever, but there's a ton of material in that pipe and in that
agreed.
buried manhole. And so one of the questions I have, maybe long-term, is the blockage at the down, if there is a blockage at the outlet, the downstream end of that culvert, is that caused by this silt that when it flows into the middle of the main drain pipe, the 12-inch drain pipe that goes across under Route 140, is that what's building up at the downstream end at the end of a storm or something and causing that backup?
That's our
Don't know
theory.
that.
That's what we think is happening. Right now, the ground is frozen and has a lot of ice over it, so we have not had any luck in trying to we haven't actually physically tried to touch it yet. We tried to put a puddle pump down there to see if we could kind of correct some flow that way, but we were having issues with the pump that day,
So
getting clogged up nonetheless.
So my point of sort of going through this is that if this other issue isn't addressed over time, you're going to have continued buildup. Every time you get heavy rain or whatever, more silt's going to go down. There's going to build up the downstream end, and there's going to have to be an ongoing maintenance. Now,
Agreed.
I have no idea, and knowing Mass DOT, it was probably before I was born, the last time they cleaned this culvert out. But that being said, I think it's an issue that needs to be investigated. I'm not sure. I didn't see if there was a wetlands down there, and that's why I made the comment about, I think the commission needs to have some input here, that you're not going to be digging up and impacting any resources of the downstream end or just downstream of the culvert.
Agreed.
Outlet.
Can I speak to that real quick, Frank?
Sure.
Keith, do you mind the sketch that we looked at earlier? We had a call this morning with Mass DOT. And I believe a couple hours ago, we forwarded over an email from Mass DOT. So currently our configuration is the black line to the two drainage manhole structures that Keith is highlighting right now, is following with his cursor. And the illicit or the new structure that was buried, the new structure that's buried is right where his cursor is right now. So Mass DOT's standpoint is that we don't have to do anything, that this is no bearing on our permit with them, application with them, that it's outside of the purview of our work and it's their issue. Knowing how slow that Mass DOT is, I talked to, had a quick chat with Cliff and Ann earlier and mentioned that, that we'd be interested in, the Campanelli would, when we were cleaning out the other structures, we would clean out the structure to give and try to coerce Mass DOT to come out and investigate where this pipe goes to and what its condition is at the other end at that same time. And Eric Nascimento at Mass DOT put something to that effect in an email to us today, that they would want us to notify them when they're going to happen, to see if they can have their maintenance division come out to look at it.
So if that were to be the case, then that newly discovered drain manhole, which is half full of silt, could be cleaned, and maybe the termination could be discovered, because otherwise it is connected to the existing system, and the contributory silt could still create a maintenance issue down the road, right, Jeff?
I 100% agree with your assessment. That statement is correct.
So, I mean, the only other choice we would have is to just terminate the ends of that. And I don't think that's a good idea, because if there's water that's getting in there, it could create issues with pavement and or the ground over the top of it.
Campanelli is definitely willing to clean it out. Now, in terms of terminating something that Mass DOT may have allowed to be connected to their system, and I have no clue what process, where that's coming from, what agreement's been made, what legal documents been passed, Campanelli would not want to be the one to terminate or disconnect that without Mass DOT's direct approval.
Okay. Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
And Eric reiterated that they wouldn't want to make a disconnect without investigating this fully. And, they even indicated that it might be something that they had put in to relieve some flooding on the road itself. So the idea would be that when we can open this up and have that would prompt the maintenance forces to come out to the site and investigate and fully figure, vet out where this pipe is connected so that we can know what to do with it and how to make sure that, or to prevent the sediment from coming back into the system.
I think that's ultimately the goal, because we don't want to
Right.
muck up the work that you're going to be doing, because we're getting stormwater improvements. And so we don't want to, have an improvement for a few years and then get all mucked up again.
Agreed.
So I think the other question that was raised is on the outfall side. And we've been out there a couple of times now, and it looks like there's quite a bit of silt out there, but right at the outfall itself. So if you wanted to have a couple of laborers go out there and do some preliminary investigations, maybe we could coordinate that, and I could make myself available to give you some eyes in the field from our perspective, and see if there is indeed something there that could be cleaned out that would facilitate the water flow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we'd be looking to do is something, nothing very, very intrusive, maybe like, a 6 foot diameter kind of swath of, to try to clean that up and see if that produces any positive movement. And if it doesn't produce the effects we're looking for, just kind of cease right there.
We have exactly the same situation on a hearing that's following this one on South Main Street, where we found 4 feet of accumulated sand immediately downstream from the outfall. And as part of the condition for their project, they're going to clean that up. So yeah, why don't we figure on coordinating that and see what we can discover?
Absolutely. Yeah. So more than happy to try to coordinate that effort. It's going to definitely be weather pending. If we have a couple of like days up in the 40s or in a row, maybe in a couple of weeks, we might be able to see if we can squeak something out if the weather starts to turn back the other way.
Yeah, you can let the administrator know, or let me know, and we'll see
Sure.
what we can.
Yeah, I'll shoot an email to Ann and try to start it that way.
Thank you.
Sort of a question. I noticed there's a number of wetland flags. Were there elevations taken when they were surveyed? So my real point is there a way you could sort of check to make sure that you've got a positive drainage slope away from the outlet?
That's actually my next concern. When my eyes in the field, my superintendent, who's pretty trustworthy, has been doing this for a good amount of time, he doesn't think that the slope is enough once you get from the outflow pipe. So that's one of the reasons why we want to have a surveyor maybe come out and kind of look at this and kind of take some measurements of what the new structure is, just so we can kind of have it recorded, because it doesn't seem like anyone had it in their records before this, and kind of capture it that way, and then move forward. Provide that information to the commission, provide that information to Mass DOT, and then kind of next steps from there.
Yeah, we can't have ponding there.
Agreed. And I think the other thing that he noted, he didn't get a video of that day, but the forebay from Lincoln was actually spilling over their spillway when he was out there the other day, and that was seeping back to where the ponding was happening at the end of the outflow pipe. So it was exacerbating the issue.
Wow. Well, that would seem to indicate, as Frank was saying, that you don't have a positive grade there.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I know when Lincoln built that one, I don't think that they were concerned. They were looking for a discharge point to the resource area after they got their pretreatment, but probably my guess is that they didn't shoot any grades there either. Or they would have discovered, if it's the case, that it would be running back into the pipe.
Mhm. I mean, my thought would be, if you're going to do some surveying, you maybe take it down till maybe you're a foot or so below the outlet elevation or something like that.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I'm just thinking, I'm not, hoping you don't have to go a mile to do that, but I mean, I'm just thinking that you got something where you could have a positive grade of 1 or 2% at least going out of that area.
Now, if he's like 300 feet out from the end of the outflow pipe and he's still not anywhere close to getting a foot below, I'm
Right.
probably just gonna have him stop there and just
Yeah,
kind
no,
of.
I think you're right. I mean, that's going to be a different issue.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, but based on our field work, and we've been out there 3 times, I think that the grade, really starts to drop off, probably about 20 feet from the outfall, maybe a little more. Yeah, right in that area.
Hmm.
But
You might be right. I haven't really trudged enough. It's with the foliage all being dormant. It's a good opportunity to kind of get a good lay of the land without having all the greenery in your way.
okay.
Right, and to your point, Frank, I don't think we have enough updated survey to really, at this time, without going out there and taking new shots, to be able to fully identify where we would get positive drainage and where we would need, how far we'd need to go with any kind of removal. So that would be the reason to get out there and verify that now, or once the weather opens up to where we can.
Like to try to, I'm going to try to, what I want to try to do is coordinate it to see if I can, want to see if I can get tell Mass DOT when we can be out there, because I would like the surveyor to survey the inverts
Yeah.
inside of that buried structure at the
Yep.
same time.
I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, it makes
And then
perfect
maybe
sense.
sort of determine, how far down outside the outlet is the sediment. I mean, it's obviously going to be relatively fresh because that buried manhole, there was, I don't know, 6 to 12 inches of soil on either side of it.
Yep. And we're not in the video right now, but if you back out from it, you can see where the drainage that's coming from the catch basin, when it blows from the unburied structure, DMH1, you can see where it blows past and just sweeps up the sediment that comes out of this pipe and sweeps it right down the outflow pipe.
Carved a little channel right through the manhole. Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I think everyone's in agreement with what's going on. It's pretty straightforward. Now, I think one thing I would say before we continue on any other points, or maybe if I don't know, if maybe in the interest of time, if we just sum up our points in an email to Anne, that she can circulate back, so we don't chew up too much time in the meeting tonight. But I think overall, from looking at the bird's eye view, I think Campanelli is committed to definitely seeing through, helping try to resolve what we can. I don't think we want to take on too much of,
DOT.
according to Mass DOT, we don't need to remove it per their regulations. So what are the next steps that, aside from have it investigate and try to solve what's going on at the outflow, aside from the outflow, what other next steps or other roadblocks or hurdles does the commission have that would prevent us from moving forward?
Well, I think resolving this issue here is pretty much it. In Frank's letter, his last comment letter, all of the issues that he raised and all of the issues that the commission had raised were addressed, and it was just a question of scoping the drainage structures that are buried to find out what's there. And I think it's fortuitous that the hearing process is still open, because then, if we do a little bit of work immediately adjacent to our resource area, we don't have to be going through the amendment process. So I think this is the last, if you will, obstacle.
Sure.
Frank?
So
Yeah, I think
Cliff,
that-
this is Russell Dion. Can you hear me for a second?
Sure.
Okay, great. So Jeffrey, I want to make an additional recommendation and see if Frank agrees, and I suspect that everybody will. We've looked at the outfall area as well. In our minds, we've thought about how to do some handwork down there to try to, A, get the water out of the pipe, B, remove some of the, silted material within a small region, as Jeff described, 6 feet. What I'd like to do, Jeff, and I think we have some of this material, if not on this site, but maybe on another site, let's pick up a little bit of filter fabric and let's pick up a yard or two of, maybe some riprap stone. So when we take out via hand digging, say 8 or 9 inches of silt at the outfall of the pipe, I'd like to line it with filter fabric and put some riprap stone over it, because what's going to happen is we are going to get some rain before we remediate this situation. We won't be remediating this whole thing till sometime in the spring. And if, and what that will be a telltale of is sediment coming out of this thing. We're going to clean the pipe, as you mentioned earlier. We're going to try to identify the illicit connection. But since we're going to put something, I just don't want to leave the natural earth at the outfall of the pipe exposed. I'd like to kind of create a little, essentially a little drainage piece, not too big, of course, but just so what the water that comes out of the pipe, sediment will settle, and it will be a true sign when we get these rains over the winter in March, which we always do get. Before we remedy this, it'll be an interesting, just something to observe. So if Frank and Cliff agree, I'd like to do that.
I guess I'll throw it back to the commission. I'm looking at the little wetland flags. So that area is a bordering vegetated wetland. And a small area, I don't know, a 4 foot by 8 foot or whatever area is not a major impact. But again, I'm presuming this is a temporary impact, that once you get the pipe taken care of and you figure out what is coming out of that unknown culvert, unknown pipe, that you'd allow this to get back to a wetland. You could remove that material, whatever else, let it grow up as a wetland again. It's more of an erosion, a temporary erosion control method or option right now.
Right. I agree. I mean, this is just temporary until ultimately I'm just projecting it. Let's just say what I've heard. Let's say 30 feet downstream, we hit a positive grade. We'll want to engineer a swale that's lined in a way that everybody on this phone call and meeting agrees with. So I know there's going to be some work that channels the water from the outfall to a positive grade. So I know that's coming. I'm just trying to, in the meantime, the new rainfall that comes just doesn't continue to bring sediment out of the pipe, and we're not able to observe it. I'm just creating a little observation port more than anything else.
It's almost like a mini plunge pool.
Yeah, exactly.
A good way to put it.
I don't have a problem. I think that would be fine.
I agree.
Okay.
And then what we can do is we can actually see what the condition of the resource area is. I think that wetland flagging was a result of primarily hydrology, not necessarily vegetation, because there was I recall a lot of silt there. So we may have a situation where we can, there may be a couple things we can do in the field that would meet the performance standard and still get us the positive grade. I've got a couple ideas already, but we got to see them in the field and work through that. There might be a way to just connect a couple of those flags, get the right grade, put some soils in there and seed it. So that would take care of any minor alteration that would occur that was a result of the silt removal. Okay. All right. So I guess we're going to wait. We're going to wait for your response, and we're going to wait for the window. So you're going to memorialize the meeting with an email or a letter or a note. And Jeff is going to mobilize his crew. And as soon as the window of opportunity arises, we'll go out and look at the field conditions, and we can move forward on that basis.
Sounds like a good plan.
I just have one more question.
Yep.
So I've been wondering for some time now after watching the video, what happened to the frog that your camera chased up?
I believe that my site super may have turned him into a prince, but I'm not sure how.
Only kidding.
That was funny. That frog was something else.
He was like, hey, this is my house.
He was a big boy. The
Oh,
eating
yeah.
was good there.
I'm surprised we only saw a frog. Sometimes we see lots of interesting creatures down there.
Well, if there's a frog, there's probably a snake.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so what would you recommend as a continuation date? That's the next thing.
What I don't know if I'm not sure when the weather is going to cooperate with us. I was just looking at the forecast. We might have an opportunity, small window next week, to try to do something. But Russ, do you have any thoughts?
No, I don't. I know it warmed up a little bit today, and it's going to be nice tomorrow, but it's going to go right back to zero over the weekend. So I think we want to be careful because we don't want to be chipping out ice and chipping out frozen soil, but we want to be I think we have to watch weather. I don't have a suggestion. I think we're all sort of in the same boat. When's the next meeting? Do you guys meet once a month or every 2 weeks?
No,
I can't remember.
We're too busy to meet once a month. We meet on the 26th, but what I was thinking, why don't we go to February 9th? That'll give us.
That sounds fine, Cliff.
Almost a month. And,
yeah.
And then if the conditions still don't allow, you can request the continuation. We'll go one more 2-week period. That should easily get us into warmer weather and the ability to do the evaluation. Plus, we need to get DOT as much time as possible so that they can respond as well.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. So, we talked about the letter being acceptable on the design as it stands. This unforeseen condition we want to resolve, and everybody understands that. So I'm completely satisfied with that date. No issues.
Okay. In that case, I'll entertain a motion to continue the hearing to the evening of June 9th at 7.
Not June.
I'm sorry, June. No, February. I'm sorry. February.
It will definitely be warm enough in June.
Yeah, it'll be plenty warm. No, February 9th at 7.
Moved. Second.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Brian waits. Aye. Okay, that's a unanimous vote. All right.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you all.
Okay, the Bellingham Conservation Commission will hold continuations of public hearings in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Bellingham Wetlands Protection Bylaw, on the notice of intent for the proposed expansion of existing pavement, installation of a retaining wall to make South Main Street wider, the installation of a 5-foot sidewalk, and associated site work and utility adjustments located within a 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands, and proposed alteration of 10 square feet of bordering vegetated wetlands located at the intersection of South Main Street and Center Street and the roadway rights of way. Gary and Howland, Milford, Mass. Has submitted the filing on behalf of South Center Realty, Quarry Drive, Milford. Continuations will be held online by the Zoom option on Wednesday, January 12th at 7:45. Apologies, we're running a little late, but John is here. So, okay.
How's everybody doing? It's been a little while. For the record, John Federico with Gurrier and Hellman. unfortunately, Kendra is feeling a little bit under the weather today, so I was asked to kind of just jump in and help cover for the meeting. I have kind of brought myself to an extent up to speed on the project, but apologies if I can't answer anything too directly. I will obviously take any questions, comments that you might have, and get those back to either Kendra or Elizabeth to get properly answered for you guys as soon as possible. But from my understanding right now, we had last met on this project on November 10th, if I'm not mistaken. From everything that I can tell, there was essentially 3 comments that kind of came out of that meeting. First comment was regarding the Versalock plans. From my understanding, there was a revise and resubmit stamp that was on those. So we do have new plans that have been revised as of 12/12. And I believe those were previously sent over to the commission in an email. In addition to that, there was a drainage comment regarding the amount of rainfall that was being proposed for the 24-hour storm that we had there. So that has been revised. And then the final comment that I'm seeing that we had was regarding an operation and maintenance for the CDS structure itself. All 3 of those items I do have documentation for with me tonight. So if you do need to see those, I can definitely go over them with you. And then as of right now, we would be looking to get the order of conditions issued for this project.
Okay. John, your notes are correct. Those are the items that were outstanding. And I believe our administrator is in receipt of those 3 items.
And they were distributed.
And they were distributed to the commission. So are there any additional questions from the commission on this? This is another situation where we have heavily silted up resource area at the outfall of a pipe. And in this one, we have 4 feet of material. So as part of the roadway improvements, we're going to be able to improve the function of the resource area. So if there's no other questions.
Mr. Chair, a quick question.
Yeah.
Without going into extensive detail, just more of a verbal confirmation is fine with me. The proposed treatment of the outflow going into that vernal pool, which is adjacent to the road that was sort of not discovered, but recognized and noted. Are you satisfied that that's going to handle the potential runoff, the types of contaminants and so forth?
Yeah, they're using a proprietary stormwater structure that's properly sized. That was one of the pieces of information that we required. So what we have right now is pretty much what we see on Mechanic Street, Mike. We have catch basins discharging into drain manholes, going directly into the resource areas. And once the catch basin silt up, they transport the silt into the drain manhole and discharge it directly into the resource area. And so we're getting an improvement there. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, in a perfect world, we'd be able to do pre-treatment and infiltration, but it's a roadway improvement and it's not a perfect road, not a perfect road.
So I hear.
All right. So in that case, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing and sign and issue the prepared order of conditions.
So moved.
Michael.
Second.
Ariane. Because it's closing and issuing, roll call vote. Noel.
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Michael.
Aye.
Ariane.
Aye.
Okay, by unanimous vote.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that.
Okay.
John, would you like
Yes.
me to contact Gary and Helen to pick up the order, or do you want that sent to the office?
I am not sure how they're handling this current project. If you wouldn't mind just reaching out to G&H, I'm sure either one of the admins or hopefully if Kendra's in, she'll be able to give a little better understanding for what's going on there.
That'll be fine. Okay.
All right, well, thank you so much. If there's anything else with this, or are we all set
Nope.
right now?
I think
All right,
we're
great.
all set.
All right. I'll see you guys around. Have a good one.
All righty. Okay. It looks like everybody's still here from our first hearing. I will dispense with the reading of the advertisement and reopen the continuation for Bungay Brook Estates for 110 townhouse units and 36 buildings in a stormwater management system. Okay.
Cliff, if I could have a couple comments on the sort of the roof drains,
Sure.
roof leaders. Again, I haven't been around for 25 years with the commission, but I've certainly been involved in projects, particularly in recent times, where the roof drains were utilized not only on single family homes or anywhere from, I don't know, 1,500 to maybe 3,000 or 4,000 square feet, but also for townhouse type units that maybe were 6 or 8 units. And the roof drains were put into the ground. I think here, from the soils that we have, the soils are really good. So I would imagine they're highly conducive to recharge. And my only other concern that I'll obviously leave to the commission is that there could be 100 or 150 feet in some of these cases from where the roof drain is going to be discharged across the ground towards the infiltration basins. Granted, the slope is going downhill in a general manner, but again, over time, is there going to be an issue with regards to maybe a channel being created, having to maintain that channel? Does it get blocked with debris or something like that? So I just wanted to bring up those points, and I'll leave it at that and let the commission continue.
Sure. And I am going to go back to the point of the stormwater management section of the subdivision regs enforced by the planning board. And they're talking about underground inline treatment systems relative to open recharge basins over underground infiltration fields. These are major stormwater management systems, I believe.
Right.
They're not talking about roof leaders, but rather major stormwater management components. That's my interpretation of the planning board, right? But so I'd like to hear something from the commission. What are your thoughts on the roof leaders? I mean, is it necessary? Is it onerous? Is it something that
Mr. Chair, the maintenance of these roof leaders, not that anybody has found any evidence that they are maintained. I agree that it'd be difficult to note if they failed because they're going into the ground, so you don't see an obvious sign. And that would be upon the association. Is there an association being formed for this development?
Yes, there's an association.
Okay.
Run by lay people.
By who? Lay people?
Lay people.
As long as they're not
Homeowners.
late.
Homeowners.
No more.
Right.
okay,
As long
so
as they're not
homeowners
late.
association.
The only other thought I was going to say was if the expert advice, engineering wise, consulting wise, from our side was that given, as Frank started to say, the soil seemed to be really good, I would then want to protect the Conservation Commission's future for denying for valid reasons that we consider without having set a precedent in some way. If we did approve this waiver for roof leaders,
Well,
or
it's
not, they're not
a-
asking for a waiver, but if we let them proceed without requiring the roof leaders.
Any other comments?
I just wanted to say, I think overland flow would contribute to erosion, which is probably why, sorry, press mute. Probably why we prefer doing the underground infiltration for roof runoff.
This is Steve Anacasa. Can I ask my engineers what the average typical slope is in the yards out there? Is it a 1% slope? Is it a 10% slope? So 10% obviously would lead to more erosion, but what is the slope in the yards?
Immediately around the units.
Yeah.
I mean, it varies quite a bit throughout the site, but it's generally flat. And it's more of a, it's not channelized. It's more of a sheet flow. So I think the likelihood of erosion is, and especially with these soils is minimal. Yeah, I mean, the slopes do vary, so it's hard to put an average on it, but it's generally flat and it's more of a sheet flow than a channelized flow in most areas immediately around the units.
So was it in general, would you say it's about as good as you could possibly get?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say so.
We'd ask the board to consider the waiver, or it's not even really a waiver, just a, I don't know if it's a policy, I don't know what you call it, because the regulations clearly state that, you know, overland flow is, we're not asking not to infiltrate. We think it's a great idea to infiltrate. We think you're, the idea to infiltrate is a great idea and it should be encouraged, it should be done. And we are doing it. We're not asking not to do it. And what we think we're doing it is in a more practical fashion. These units are built to last hundreds of years, not 10 years, not 15 years, not 20 years. So we're building something here that's going to last hundreds of years. Can we really say those infiltration devices are going to work as good as overland flow?
Hundreds of years is way down the road. Is the property restricted from having the owners do any kind of changing of the exterior landscaping or installation of any kind of potentially restrictive structures? I don't mean buildings, I mean like a raised garden or something like that. You're talking about a lot of areas that you're saying are going to flow to these infiltration basins, and yeah, the soil may be great, but over a period of time, I kind of agree with Ariane. You're going to see some erosion in certain areas and some less in other areas, and I don't have a high degree of confidence that these lay people are going to do anything about it necessarily, and in fact may exacerbate it by causing certain areas that should flow through behind their house or whatever, they want to put in a small garden and they want to raise it or just put in a garden. Is that going to be stopped so that the flow will be ensured throughout?
This is a condominium. This is a condominium and they're not allowed to do plantings on the road. They're not allowed to build any structures. They're not allowed to regrade. It's a condominium. It's all professionally landscaped and they're not allowed to do anything on their own.
And the other item too, as far as, you know, the likelihood of erosion. I mean, we all know what the soils are out here, and you know, this is an active golf course, and it's, I don't know if Phil is still on the phone, but there is never, you know, any puddling or ponding out here, and we're not, you know, not changing the soils. There's 25 feet of sand. That's not changing. So the likelihood of there being erosion and overland flow, the water's going to hit the ground and it's going to get into the ground, you know, almost immediately. So
sounds like a perfect site for roof infiltration to me. But I have another question, and it's something that was mentioned a little earlier, and it has something to do with underground utilities. Is that
so what's the question?
Someone had said something about underground utilities for the units, and that the roof infiltration might interfere in some manner with the underground utilities. Is that a possibility?
Well, the utilities are coming into the sides of the building. So, you know, the buildings are, I think, you know, whatever they are, 30 feet apart. So you have utilities coming into each building on the sides, on both sides. So that just, you know, eliminates room for for an infiltration system on the sides of the units. So if that's the case, then, you know, you're looking at pushing these potentially to the back of the units and the front of the units. I mean, one thought is, you know, all of the back of the units flow overland, infiltrate over the ground. So, you know, if we can come to some compromise on this policy is to maybe provide, you know, dry wells or infiltration systems at the front of the building where there's potential that, you know, the gutters would, you know, hit the pavement and flow over pavement to the catch basins and the stormwater treatment units. Could we just get away with putting infiltration systems at the front of the building and let the back of the building flow overland? Would that be a consideration?
I think that's reasonable.
Are the roofs pitched so that half would go one way and half would go the other?
Yeah, pretty much front to back. Yeah, half the building to the front, half to the back.
Cliff, I just wanted to make sure when you say it's reasonable, like the second option, right? Not the going over pavement.
Right. So provide infiltration at the fronts of the buildings only and let the rear of the building flow overland to the infiltration basins.
So that eliminates the potential for any kind of pollutant load.
Right.
You know, that makes sense to me. But does the commission have a consensus on that? So in other words, the rear of the building would be sheet overland flow, and the front of the building would have, you know, the dry wells or
right,
or Coltech units directly hooked up to the downspouts.
Correct.
And just to be clear that on Ariane's point, the rear of the buildings don't have the sheet flow go across from their backyards into like a road right behind them or something, crossing pavement again, correct?
No, it doesn't. No, they're all over grass or grassed areas or meadow areas that would eventually flow to the basins.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
I like that idea. Yep, I think that works for us, and I sense a consensus here. So, we'll ask you to revise the plan to show that.
Yep.
Do that for us, and also make a note that it's for the front of the buildings only.
Yep, we can do that.
Okay.
We appreciate that compromise.
So now.
So if we go back to this, you want to go back to the soils testing?
Are there any other issues first before we get hung up on that again?
Well, actually, those were the two. There are some other issues here.
Those were the two big ones, I think.
But let's just go through it quickly. There's no hearing behind us now. We'll revisit that one. If we look at number
so 4, if I may, that was one of the other issues, and we are working on the hydraulic calculations for that.
Okay.
And we'll be able to provide that information. We were close to having it done today, but we should have that tomorrow, actually, and we can provide that information that was requested.
This didn't by that much.
I know.
Okay.
Well, yeah. So, but for the areas that we've already done, there are no changes to the plans. The calculations prove that everything works as designed. It's the challenge is just getting the output information into a, you know, a readable and a report that makes sense. So that's what we've been working on. So we should be able to have that.
Okay.
So that shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, good. So number 5, it looks like Frank's okay. I didn't have any questions on that. Number 6, do we know where you stand with the planning board waivers?
But I'm sorry, we're meeting with them tomorrow. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 6 is a planning board thing. a planning board jurisdiction.
Right.
7, I believe, also.
Mhm.
Number 8, spot grades. The ADA.
That's planning board.
It's a planning board thing. Were the plans revised to reflect the compliance with the ADA? Do you know?
Yes, well,
I know it's not our thing, but it's part of our letter package. So that's been addressed. Okay.
Mhm.
And I guess that's the same with number 9.
Which is,
Okay, 10 was good. Frank, if there's something I'm missing here, chime in, please. But
I just kept on repeating no further issues for a number of these in a row there.
yeah,
No, that's
11,
good. No, that's
12, 13, and 14, believe me, we'd like to see those.
yeah.
so do we.
So do I.
Okay, 15, 16 are all good. 17. What is it? The open space?
Yeah, we got that plan.
Oh, yeah, yep. We have 18. We're dealing with that one now. We've dealt with portions of this already. Frozen ground conditions, you did the calculations. Good. Frank, that's in compliance, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. 20. Okay, we're working on our part of that with the soil testing. I think we've addressed the roof infiltration, even though it's not a bylaw requirement. Now under environmental, we've got 1, 2, 3. We've already made the determination that the pond is not a resource area. 4. That's the waiver request that we're going to get back to end the meeting. Oh, snow storage.
That's the big one.
That is another one that we're concerned about. I think Mike has expressed some concern about that. Do we have an expanded snow storage area here?
Yes, so,
There was a revision to that.
Exhibit.
right,
Exhibit.
it is EX 104 towards the back of the plan set. We provided an exhibit plan showing the snow storage areas along, all of the driveways. We had some at the parking lot at the front, around the existing home and the existing maintenance shed, provided areas there. We had areas around the cul-de-sacs that we expanded, not only on the bulb end, but also at the intersections, opposite the intersection of the cul-de-sacs, where you would typically see, the snowplows kind of get a path through the bulb and then turn around and plow out the other direction.
Could I
So
just
Sure.
interrupt for a sec, please?
Mhm.
Could you share your screen and
Yeah, absolutely.
and
Yep.
call that up for us? Noel, would you make that happen?
All set.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Okay. So let me back out a little bit here. So this is the plan that was added, snow storage exhibit EX 101. So we provided a key showing the snow storage area, which are basically these hatched areas here. So we'll start at the beginning of the site or the front of the site. So all along the driveways, we have an area where you would typically see snow plows plow off to the side of the road. Along, the existing home here, the maintenance shed, these snow storage areas. And this is what I was talking about with the cul-de-sac bulb. So we have areas in here that they would snow plow to, the driveways that would plow out in these directions and in these areas. And then typically, as you would snow plow, you would turn around and you would snow plow back out this area. So that's why we had expanded areas opposite the intersection to the cul-de-sacs, large area here, another large area here at the ends of the cul-de-sac. Same here. We were trying to avoid the pathways. So, they would have to plow to that area, and then the same opposite the cul-de-sac here. And then if they needed to stockpile snow, we designated an area off the emergency access drive that they could potentially stockpile snow, obviously outside the limits of pavement everywhere. So there wouldn't be any snow storage on pavement anywhere.
Just a quick question, if I could, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Are any of those areas that are marked as for snow storage have curbing on the edge of this paved area before you hit the grass? I can't remember. Some of them have sidewalks, but not everywhere.
There is a Cape Cod berm, essentially.
Okay.
That's required.
And the second, well, it makes sense. I mean, you're
Right.
having a road without any pavement on the edge,
Right.
like it stops erosion. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
The second, and so my concern would be for the longevity of the maintenance as the plows, at least my street, where it's not much better than Cape Cod paving, berms, whatever you call them on the sidewalk. They have a habit of catching and chipping and tearing up chunks periodically. But also in those areas, especially the larger areas that you show, for example, there's no landscape, like the one right just above where your mouse is.
Yeah.
There's that large area there. There's no landscaping in the way of vegetation, like trees, shrubs and stuff.
There would be trees. I didn't take it to the next level of,
No, I'm just curious,
yeah.
General question. You don't have to show
Yeah.
trees. I'm just,
Right.
a lot of bushes and plantings and landscaping, which I assume you would, because there's a lot of areas you're showing for snow storage. And
Right.
those are vegetated. You're going to kill the vegetation by piling snow on them. Unless it's a full grown tree, you're unlikely to have the vegetation survive. So it's kind of, yeah, you could pile it there, but you're going to have to re-landscape every spring, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, along the perimeter of the driveways, they're just street trees. There's no shrubs or anything like that in those areas. The shrubs are basically designated around the foundations of the homes.
Okay.
And we've provided the landscape plans and a typical unit landscape plan for individual units, but along the road, it's like you would see any other subdivision. There would be street trees there.
Yeah, okay. Well, if that's measured by an engineer as to designed for, how many inches of snow is that going to handle those snow storage areas?
Yeah, there's, I don't have an answer to that question. I don't know if there is. I don't know if there's a formula for that, honestly.
Well, I figured it's just a sheer volume measurement. If you know how many square feet of pavement there is, and you have 2 inches of snow, how much of a volume of snow is? Yeah, and I granted wet snow, dry snow, all that, but there must be a range of, okay, you're gonna have X many cubic feet. Well, how big are these piles going to be reasonably be before they obstruct views on the corner or be unwieldy and So, and there's no prediction. I'm not saying we're going to have terrible snows the first year this is built, but if it's only designed for a 1-inch snowstorm and that can handle it fine with some piles throughout, that's one thing. If it can handle a foot, that's a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, I think there's so many variables. I've seen in other towns where, they actually do have a requirement and a calculation for snow storage where it be, whatever, 3 or 5% of the impervious area or the paved area, because obviously you're not going to necessarily have accommodate the roofs, but yeah, I've seen a couple towns actually have a requirement.
It's not, is it in those towns a requirement that's measured sort of like the storm infiltration for a detention basin, a 100-year storm, 50-year storm, which is X many inches of rain in a period of time and all that?
I haven't seen that. The only thing I've seen is, like I said, maybe it's 3 or 5 or whatever number of percentage of paved areas you have to designate as snow storage somewhere on site. So
X many square feet. So there's X
Yeah.
many square feet that you've designated with the hatched areas that correspond to whatever percentage of the total paved areas
Right.
that would be plowed.
Yeah. Don't ask me what that percentage is because I don't
Not,
know.
no, that wouldn't help me in any way because I'm more
Right.
concerned about the volume of snow, not how many square feet you have
Yeah.
of it. I don't think one corresponds to that, but that's at least you have something marked there, which is certainly better than what we had before. So thanks.
Yep. You're welcome.
So one of the things we have to keep in mind, Mike, is that when we get involved in snow storage, our major concern is that the contractors who are doing the snow removal aren't placing it into stormwater management structures or resource areas. In this case, they'd have to go a long way to put it in a resource area. And the stormwater management structures are located behind the buildings. The only area where we might have any issues is the parking area up where the clubhouse currently is. So, you know, and that's slated for snow storage. But there are other areas. And so we'll condition it such a way. They're going to have a series of plantings along the northern boundary there. And I'm sure they're not going to want to be destroying the homeowners association is not going to want to be destroying the plantings with equipment pushing snow and breaking them down. So
right. And one thing I fail. I mean, I didn't mention it this time, but I think I mentioned it in the past that we're not showing any snow storage area in the 100-foot buffer zone anywhere on site. So
perfect. Okay. So I guess that gets us back to the last item, which is test pits. And
right.
So, okay. Is there any other method we can use to get that information? I mean, in all reality, the site is going to be substantially altered during construction. How much material is going to be removed before you get to the basin bottom? I mean, I don't have the plans with the current grades and the proposed grades.
It varies throughout the site. There's some areas where, you know, we're 10 feet to the bottom of the basin. There's some areas where we're 2 feet, to the bottom of the basin from existing grade. And then you need to go, 5 feet below that. So, some of the holes are going to be pretty deep and some not so much. So that's why, Mr. Vinikas was saying that, with the soils conditions out here, that these holes will be pretty substantial. And again, we're not trying to, shy away from doing the test pits. We're certainly do them prior to construction. We're just trying to, avoid having to do them now.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
I kind of lost my train of thought, but yeah, I mean, that's basically it. And, and we'd like to do, since these holes are going to be so big and the basins, some of them are small, we'd like to be allowed to do one per basin and not 3. I think that would be overkill for this. And again, we did the borings. I think we all know, again, what the soils are like out here. The test pits aren't going to show anything out of the ordinary. The soils are consistent. It's sand for 25 feet deep. So we're not expecting any surprises. We're not expecting the testing to change anything. If it does, then we'll come back to the commission with, either an amended order or what, but we're not anticipating that. I think we're not anticipating any surprises with the soil. It's pretty consistent.
Yeah, and that's what we in the past, and that was the intent of the regulation, to eliminate the need for changing on the fly, if you will,
Right.
modifying stormwater management structures when good construction and good engineering practice indicates that you get all your information prior to the design of the plans. This
Yep.
has always been the way we've done it.
Right.
Obviously, well, I think we already stated that one test pit per structure is enough, and we don't need 3. And that's based on our estimation that the soils are appropriate. I mean, if we were in a situation where we had clays or silty loam or loamy silt, we would be in a situation where we'd need all three.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, and again, it's been a while since I've actually had an opportunity to look at the plans in depth, but there was the one boring that you did where you had some perched soil.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to get to the grading plan here.
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, I'm just looking at the overall plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's see if I can locate the borings that we have.
Yeah,
This
they're
might
a
not be the
little-
best. So here's
further.
one here, right in the middle of the site. This is one up here, located next to this basin. Trying to figure out where we had the rest of them. There's another one here.
Yeah. This one is sort of the, I could see the upper right corner.
Yep, right here, right there. Yep.
So a question, I think you have 8 basins, if I remember correctly. Do you have an idea how many of them have like 1 or 2 foot of cut and how many have 5 or 10 feet of cut? And the
Yep,
question
so-
I'm really gonna get at the end is, could you do, in the shallow ones, could you do a 5 or so 8 foot deep excavation now? And maybe there might be some leniency for the future with a deeper than that?
Yeah, so we have, I think we have 5 basins. We have one here, 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 and then
Okay.
this one I think was 2 in the past. We combined it to
Yeah.
1.
And there's one in
So
the
this,
middle.
oh yeah, I'm sorry. I always forget this one. There's one here as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 6 of them. So this is the deepest one. This one I think is, about close to 12 feet deep. This one I believe is the shallowest one. And then these are somewhere in the middle.
And so where was the boring that that demonstrated perched soil? Because
Do you-
see, I don't see any borings in the basins or even on the basin walls. I mean,
I think the one right there is got pretty close, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Right, there's one right here.
And
It's
that's the other one in the driving range, Jim, up to the left,
yeah, this one
fairly close. The other,
Yep.
and then there's one in the center of the site,
right here.
right in the circle, that's not totally remote. We didn't have one near the, and I can't
There's
read the
one
number.
down, there's one down here too.
Right, we didn't have one in the basin to the west.
Here.
Over by the homes, yeah, that one we're not near. And we really didn't have one near the long one that's back.
Right down here.
We didn't know where all the basins would be at the time we were trying to bore, not in the active line of golf balls at the day we were out there, so.
And then,
the one-
Mike, do you remember, this was done like in April, I think, right? Or maybe even earlier than that, I think. I don't remember when they were done.
I remember we were dodging golf balls and it
Yeah.
was fairly nice out. It's in the stormwater report and I don't recall, but it was before we did the first stormwater report. So yeah, it would have been in the spring.
Yeah, I'm looking at the soils. There are the 14th and 15th of April.
Yeah,
Boring 42102 had perched water. Boring 42103 and 04 also had perched water at about 90 inches.
those are the ones that are more, so one was up by the.
This is one here.
Yeah, one is there.
I
We
missed
worked
that
our
one.
way straight out. Two is,
And
2 is here.
5 was, yeah, the perched water was 150 inches, which is 13 plus feet.
right. And then
That's
3 is towards the.
3
middle,
right
and-
here.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then 4 and 5 are up by the driving range. Yeah, we kind of
Yep.
did a clockwise loop, dodging the players. Yeah, and we saw them in a couple of them. There were, and when we say confining, what it was fine sand. And what we had was several feet to 10 feet of dry sand. It was loose, it was dry. Then we got a wet layer, and then we got dry sand again, all the way to the bottom of the boring where we actually hit pretty much groundwater in every hole. So we did 25 feet in each case. There was always a significant dry layer. And then in those instances where there was a wet layer, it was shallow, it was narrow. And then there was another significant dry layer below it. And so as we discussed earlier, we did add, and this was a suggestion that Frank made, and it's reasonable. And I don't know if I mentioned it to this commission or if it was the planning board, but we did do something like this on a site in Acton, Mass, and it was for a septic system, but basically went through the confining layer. It was good sand above, good sand below. And essentially you connect the two layers of the good draining material, and you know that the water is going to go out. You still have plenty of depth for filtration. You have plenty of depth for lateral movement of water. You're not relying necessarily on a column. So that water will always continue to move laterally if there was some minor siltation of the basin. But I think it was that one in the back up against Pine by the neighbors on Squire that, to the south of that area. That was the one that's most problematic for an open boring. Or sorry, for an open test pit.
Because of the depth of the
Right.
The
basin
depth.
itself.
The depth, yeah, because the hole, it's going to be a massive hole just to get the depth, because the hole's just going to continue to collapse. So the excavator's going to have to dig a big hole and work his way down in there.
No,
The other ones are probably not so unreasonable, but that one is certainly a challenge.
So if you, again, I'll play devil's advocate. If you had to redesign that one basin because you found something that was unsuitable,
unexpected.
that's sort of in an area that's pretty wide open. And again, I'm not trying to do your design for you. How easy would that be to come back early on? And I think one of the concerns of the commission is things happen during construction and then you find out about them when you get the as-built. Then it's too late.
Yeah, so this area actually overflows to the north if it ever does overflow. So, immediately off the top of my head, I think we would end up moving the basin to the north and just rerouting the drainage to get under that emergency vehicle access. Or likewise, it could actually get all the way around the corner. I believe that bottom of that basin is higher than the basin to the rear. We're still showing which is, when I say rear, I'm sorry, to the southeast corner of the site. We're also still showing, just go a little down to the right there, we're still showing the pad for what was originally going to be the wastewater area. It would be possible to relocate some of the drainage there, and we're all that's beyond the 200-foot riverfront. You can actually see that just to the left of the cursor, Jim, if you move left. You can see that so there's ample room between buildings and riverfront area for more stormwater. Again, not suggesting that we want to do that, but gravity could get water all the way around that corner.
So let's get back to Frank's original idea. It looks like we have one area that is problematic for making because of the cut that you have to make. So let's do the investigation in the other basins, and we'll defer to basin construction. When you start roughing out the basins, you can do the evaluation there, because you're going to be roughing out the basins before you start building on units, right?
Yes. Yep.
Frank,
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yes. Yep. That's correct.
What does the commission think of that, Michael?
Yeah, my other question would be talking about the same vein there. If there was any basin that we could test earlier on that would be untenable from the developer's point of view at the point in the process where we would otherwise have been doing the testing to do it. In other words, he's got house lots laid out and everything else. He hasn't started building houses up yet, but he's doing now the basins, and we hit a bad area. Is there any basin of those 6, other than the really big deep one, that has some room to move, that he would possibly, if he, again, hits a perched area that he can't break up or whatever, as we talked about, that he would have to relocate, that he couldn't do because no one, especially the developer, is gonna want to, the applicant is gonna want to have to move or remove or eliminate units because there's no place else to put the necessary amount of detention basin that has to be shifted because they hit an area. Are there any of those other 5 of those 6 other than the big one that are like that? Because I would really want to see those tested sooner.
Well, I think that's what Frank's suggestion was.
But I wasn't hearing if it was all 5 of the other ones, other than the really big one that could shift, or just a couple of them.
Well, I think that the big one, that the one to the west, the center west of the site is the problematic one because it's got the biggest cut. And it would be difficult because the sand would keep collapsing into the hole. The other ones are less of a cut. So what we would do is we would request that information as part of the hearing process. And then at least we would know that that portion of the stormwater management system would be built in accordance with the standards and good engineering practices. And I think that's what Frank was getting at, right?
Right.
And the last point that I would make me feel more comfortable is that we have a clearly defined, delineated, and in writing point at which point we would declared point either in the construction or in the timetable or the overall schedule of events that should everything permits wise from everybody else be happening. We would then say, okay, at this point in time, we are going to have the remaining testing done that's required and results forwarded to the commission and approved before the work continues. In other words, it's not just going to keep flowing through and, oh, by the way, here's the results and they were okay, but there are some, no, it's just, at this point in time, we do the testing, stuff stops until the test results come back, which shouldn't take long or right away, I think. And then everything good, great, keep going. If not, then okay, now, as you said, the applicant has said they're gonna have to come back.
Yeah, Mike, we'll craft the order in such a way that that we get that information. And
all right, fine.
And they're
good with
gonna
that
need
otherwise,
it.
I think.
They're gonna need it as well.
Yeah, right.
So do we have a consensus from other members? Is everybody in agreement that we'll direct them to get the information, one test per basin, with the exception of that, the one on the west?
Yeah, that
Cliff,
sounds good to me.
I have another thought on the one to the left. What if they were to do some borings there? Because we don't have any borings that are, anywhere near the detention basins. Would that make any sense or no?
Well, we're gonna ask them to do the pits and the other 4, and they have not performed the base a test there. I mean, I don't know. Is that? What do you think, Frank? Is that something that? Or do you think we should just wait and do it? When construction commences.
So I mean, sort of from a practical standpoint, I'm an engineer. Sorry about that. You've got a backhoe to do a boring. You're gonna have to get a different kind of rig in there. I mean, in the applicant may say that's fine with them, but you're still gonna end up at when you're done doing the test pit in that area.
It's the
Would the boring, Frank, would the boring tell us though if there's a perched level? Because wasn't that the boring that discovered that perched area before in that area?
That's
Yes,
just once.
they certainly would.
So it gives us
It
one
would,
piece
but
of
it wouldn't be
information.
able to tell you the depth.
Right. I mean, they made approximations in the soils reports at like 90 inches and stuff like that. And really, I think that was based more upon all of a sudden we find wet, it's dry sand. Now we find a wet layer or a little area and stuff like that. And when you go below that wet layer, it's dry sand. I presume you're taking up cores or something like that from the boring.
Right.
And that's how you figure the stuff out. So it certainly would be able to help you find if you've got a pursed water table. Again, at 90 inches, that's about 7-8 feet deep. So if they're going to be cutting down 10 feet, I think was the number that you mentioned, you're going to go through that anyways, and you really want to know what's below that for the next 5 feet or whatever from the bottom is 6 feet down. so that your bottom of your basin is at least the 4 feet, 5 feet, if it's in an aqua area, below any perched water or below any water. It could, if they wanted to bring on a boring rig, that's fine. But again, that's an extra piece of equipment that wouldn't be needed right away.
Right.
It
And
might
it
be,
could still tear up the golf course if this is the primary concern of them. If it's like a track mounted geoprobe, it'll just like tear up the green.
well, here's the thing, we get that information, and what we're looking at is a little bit of revised calculation. We're looking at details that show the roof infiltrators on the backs of the houses. And we're looking for the test pits in 4 of the basins, or is it 5? Five.
Fine.
There's 6 basins, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
5 of the basins. And then we issue the permit.
That's
So
very
they'll be
reasonable.
ready to go from our perspective. They'll be ready to go in the spring. So.
Yeah. Go ahead,
We know,
Steve.
we know where the water table is. That's been determined throughout the site. And the soil's all consistent. We found one spot with one small perched area. As a matter of normal construction practices, these basins are the very first thing that we construct before we lay any pipe, before we pave any roads, long before any buildings are built. These basins are built, and the testing would be complete.
Right, so, I mean, what we're talking about here is doing the testing in the 5 basins and deferring the testing in the one that's gonna be the most problematic, getting that information, incorporating it into the record, issuing the permit, and then when construction starts, they're gonna start roughing those basins out, Mike, and at that time, it'll be appropriate for them to go in there and do the testing. And if they find out that there are not appropriate soils at the elevation they need, I think Frank asked the question, do you have some wiggle room to move the basin around? And the answer was, yeah, they have the wiggle room. And we'll be part of that process.
Cliff, I have another comment on that basin to the west.
Yeah.
So there was talk about the wiggle worm for that and moving it up
Well,
to the
if
north.
it was necessary.
Yeah, if it's necessary. Well, what that's gonna do is also impact that's probably the biggest snow storage place they have mapped out on there. Is gonna be right under it.
Yeah, we can flip it if we have to.
Put
You know, if the basin moves, well, yeah,
south of the driveway.
right, yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay, so I guess, okay, good. We have a consensus here. So timing, the calculations you almost had them today. So
Yeah.
that's not going to be an issue. I would imagine, and I think every other comment has been addressed from our perspective.
Yeah,
We're gonna need the revisions reflecting the roof leaders to the rear of the buildings, and then the test pit data, 1 in each basin for the 5, and we will condition the 6th one. And what are we looking at for time frame here?
so if we can, I just want to make sure we don't have any surprises at the next hearing. There was one other waiver we requested, was the alternatives analysis, and I know,
Oh, yes.
you know, we had talked about that before,
Yep,
and we had revised the plans to move whatever work we did have, you know, closest to the buffer outside of that. So, you know, we are requesting a waiver from actually doing an alternatives analysis. Like I said before, you know, there aren't any homes within the 100-foot buffer. We're not clearing any trees within the 100-foot buffer. We're not touching the perimeter trees at all. And whatever their work that was in the closest to the wetlands, we did move away already as part of the design process and permitting process. So that was one of the other waivers that we are requesting that we didn't talk about tonight. So
You are right. We did not talk about that. And I think in all good conscience, we can say that based on the work that's been done and our knowledge of the site, that will not be required.
okay, we appreciate that. Thank you.
So time, what are we looking at? What would you like?
Well, I
What
think
we'll do is this, we'll commence the drafting of the permit. We'll get started on that.
Okay.
And we will await the information and incorporate that into the document. But at least we can get a head start on it. So it's not going to be an unavoidable delay here. I don't think you'll be ready by the next meeting, January 26th.
Yeah, the soils testing is obviously going to be the longest lead time.
Do you think February 9th? You know what we could do? We can schedule you for February.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
And then you'll let Ian know. And then, because believe me, we fill the time slots up quickly.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
I think that works.
Okay. All right. In that case, I'll entertain a motion to continue the hearing to the evening of February 9th at 7:30.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Second?
Second,
Okay, Michael. I think I've got a handle on everybody who's here. All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Ariane, did I hear you?
Sorry, I said it was on mute. Aye.
I'll see. Okay. Then that's all in favor. Okay, we're good.
Right, great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll see you on the 9th.
You got it.
Bye.
If there's anything else that comes up, you can just shoot an email to Ian.
Okay, will do.
Okay, commission, don't leave yet. We've got more information. We've got more things we need to do. We have a bunch of stuff to sign, so we need to coordinate a signing party or something.
Well, you know what we say, Ann, anytime, day or night, because signing warrants is our delight. So you say when.
Oh, geez.
Anytime, huh?
Yeah, I'll be down there tomorrow morning. You know me, I'm ready. Let's
Well,
go.
I'm ready with the permit, so
Okay.
you just.
I
say
could come
what-
either tomorrow or during noon or Friday during noon. Probably Friday would be better for me.
Okay, Friday.
Friday at noon.
Noon, Ariane.
Okay, so we have Mike.
Mike, what time, like in the mid-morning? 10?
Yep, tomorrow morning's fine.
Okay, so we have two.
And then yours three.
Noelle's got a problem now because her time is counted for.
No,
That's right.
working life, geez.
No, I mean, I can meet on Saturday morning too, if that works for anybody.
I'll have to email you on about that later this week. See if it works.
Okay,
Brian, you pop in whenever you have a chance.
Yeah, it'll either be tomorrow morning or Friday morning.
oh, that
That's
would be great.
perfect.
Yeah,
So
I will call you first, then.
Okay, so Noelle, if that's the case, then you don't have to be bothered and don't have to worry about it because we would have enough
We'll
signatures.
have four.
Unless you really want to sign, and I'll be very happy to wait for you to sign. Okay, so.
Okay. Well, if you need me, I will be there.
Okay. Well, thank you. So I think we should probably talk about the things that we're going to be showing here.
All right, so we have the order of conditions for South Main Street and Center Street. Then we have 4 certificates of compliance. The Silver Lake Road Basin C, we're going to issue a certificate of compliance on that. We've done multiple inspections. It's finally functioning properly and it's in good shape. Thank you, Frank, for your diligence as well. We have a septic repair on Archer Street. Ann and myself have been down there several times. All the stuff was removed by hand from the resource area. The owner did it himself, trucked it all to the recycling center. We have a certificate request for Beechwood Road. How many people remember the beaver lake that we discovered when we were doing the wetland delineation?
That's down in that development behind
Beechwood
Shapers?
Estates off of Farm Street.
Off of Farm Street.
Barry LaRivia had his little girl that day.
We stood on the trunk of a tree that was 32 inches in diameter, and the beavers had cut it down.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, yeah.
It was
I remember that
impressive, yeah. Okay, well, they want a certificate of compliance. And then we have 550 Rentham Road, septic repair. So we have a bunch of things to sign. Also upcoming, we have the MACC annual conference. I strongly encourage people to do it when take as many classes as they can. Maybe our friend Matt Byrne will be up again this year.
Yeah. What are the dates for that this year?
March 1st through the 12th.
All virtual.
All virtual.
So
And
you can get the package, I think, for 150.
and it's awesome because, you know, they have afternoon meetings, they have evening meetings, they have weekend. So it's really worth doing. And the last thing is, I think that we have one set of minutes to be two sets of minutes. Sorry. Two. Deuce.
Say.
Okay. Comments on the minutes?
Anybody? Come on. I got 2 very small things, one on the October 27th and one on the November 10th one. Hold on a second, I'm calling them up. Just make sure I get the right page. Oops, minutes. Come on, Dropbox.
While he's looking, I'm looking at Frank's background. What do you got there? The Templars versus Saladin?
No, actually, I don't think, maybe I can't get rid of my beautiful face. There you go. So this is the Battle of Isandlwana. It was 1879. The British decided they were going to invade Zululand, and being the big, wonderful folk, they sent their army in 5 columns. And the Zulus, who were using spears, or sagis they called them, were a better soldier. So the British general in charge, Lord Chelmsford, had a force of about 6,000 men. He basically left about 2,800 men, the bottom of the hill there, which was the mountain there, Isandlwana. And the Zulus attacked. And the guy stood up to them, and the British figured their firepower would be great. And what they forgot is that when you run out of ammunition, your firepower doesn't work anymore. And the British commissary people would not allow Company A of the 27th Regiment to take ammunition from Company B's supply, even though it was closer. And they also forgot to issue screwdrivers, so they couldn't open up the cartridge things. British ran out of ammunition, and they were pretty much wiped out. Of the 2,800 men, I think a bunch of the natives who were with the British took off early because they knew they were going to be wiped out. But about 1,300 of the British troops, pretty much all the ones that were there, were wiped out. And Lord Chelmsford, who was about 10 miles away, had his guys watch the battle, never bothered going over there till the next day. The British also beat 2 other columns of the British. The British retreated. They came back stronger with a lot more people. And they brought ammunition. They finally beat the Zulus. But it was quite an impressive thing. The little sideshow was they had about 120 British at a little sort of station about 5 miles away from this battle. And one of the Zulu regiments that were called impis didn't attack. They got to the battle late. So they attacked these 120 British. The British basically sealed themselves in some corrals and some walls and made walls of some of the supplies. And Rorke's exactly. They beat the Zulus when they were numbered probably about, I don't know, 20 or 30 to 1. Where here, they were not quite the same number, and they were more prepared. So
that's a good Michael Caine movie. It's a 1960 something movie. They show that part of the battle, the Rorke's Drift battle. I think it's called Rorke's Drift. Maybe I'm not sure.
I think it's I think it was called Zulu.
Zulu,
there was
maybe,
another one, Zulu Dawn, where they have this battle shown, where
Right.
Britt Lancaster was in it.
Shaka Zulu.
Yeah, and then the last piece is this was one of the great examples in the British Empire when Queen Victoria was around. There was a phrase that a poor lower level official would have to say either to the prime minister or the queen, and that was, someone has blundered when there was a military disaster, whether it be here in South Africa or at Khartoum or other places in Asia and stuff like that. So they had great soldiers, not great leaders for the most part. So.
Yeah, well, I was looking in the background and it looked like, I really can't see, but it looks like, it looked like shields and a cross on them. That's why I thought maybe they were Templars. And I saw all the color, which now I know were the Brits, and I thought maybe it was the forces of Saladin. And I thought, oh, well, but the mountain kind of threw me.
If you want to see a good mini series on the Zulu nation back in that era, there's one called, I think it's called Shaka. And it was the name of the leader at that time. And it shows him from a kid to becoming a leader. It was a really good, eye-opening series. They were ruthless. The things that they went through to become a leader / heads get chopped up. People got speared all the time with those spears. But anyway, yeah. But they were good warriors, that's for sure. Going around the sides and stuff. Moving on to the minutes real quickly, if anybody wants to. Sorry, October 27th meeting, first hearing, end of the first page there. Just a minor thing. I'm making it larger. Hold on so I can read what I said. This is more of a point of information. I'm not sure what it says. It was recommended that this pipe have a camera in it to determine the integrity of pipe. We talked about that at today's hearing, that they had the camera in it. It will be part of the special conditions. Are we intending? It sort of sounded like we're intending to keep a camera in there as part of the special conditions, not to just explore it with a camera. We aren't going to keep a camera in there, right?
No. That.
See what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Why don't we just say it's the intent to camera the pipe?
Yeah,
I can just put that.
Yeah, that's fine. As part of the special conditions, so
Yeah.
they already did that. So yeah, okay, that's fine. That was just more of a question for information. And then the November 10th one, let me jump to that real quickly. Hang on. First hearing, just word spell check thing, because you got it right everywhere else. I said I could see the first. The first sentence, well, after the commission has received the letter, this is near the bottom of page 1 or halfway down. The letter was reviewed by the commission and has recommended that the roof leaders be installed. You got leaders everywhere else. I just think leaders to leaders. Maybe you're converting.
Thank you.
Maybe you're converting.
Got it.
I'm not sure. And then the last hearing, the last sentence, just scroll down. Oh, this was talking about the Gurry and Howland one, South Main Street and Center Street. The last paragraph, the main paragraph there. The engineer did not know the answer to this, but will research this report back to the commission. I just think add that word "and" in between.
Yeah, okay.
Sounds good.
Great, thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. So motion to adjourn.
One more question, real quick. Sorry, Cliff. Amy, do we usually, saying present at the meeting, I noticed Anne's not listed. Do we intentionally exclude her?
I can put Ann in there.
I don't know if she wants to be known that she's there.
Ann, do you want to be in there?
No.
I think we can put Ann in and we'll need a motion to accept and approve those as revised.
Well, I didn't know if Anne, after today, she's not seen or heard, really. Usually we see her in here. I didn't know if it was a trend. She's
No,
fading.
I'm here.
She's here.
I know. Okay. All right.
Okay, motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Anybody?
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
By unanimous vote. Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Thanks. Keep warm, everybody.
Be safe.
Okay.
Thanks. You too. Thanks.
Frank, can you hold on just a sec? All right.
Oh.
Good.
Have a good night, everyone.
Take care.
You
Good night.
too. Right.